I watch Elias as he types, his fingers moving over the keyboard with a kind of nervous energy. His brows are furrowed in concentration, lips slightly parted, completely lost in the world he's building. He doesn't notice me staring. He's been working on this novel for years now. A sci-fi epic full of action, ancient prophecies, and space battles. He talks about it constantly, about the plot twists he's planned, about the deep lore of his universe, about his characters and their intricate backstories. And I love that he's so passionate. But there's one problem. Elias doesn't read. I mean, he used to, sort of. The last book series he read was Harry Potter when they were still coming out. He loved them. But after that, nothing. Not because he's not intelligent, he just prefers movies, video games, and comics. And that wouldn't be an issue except, well, it shows in his writing. And now, here I am, holding the latest printed pages of his manuscript, my stomach twisting itself into knots. He's watching me expectantly, waiting for my reaction. I don't know what to say. The story itself is creative, sure. He has this entire universe mapped out in his head. Alien civilizations, complex political conflicts, a chosen hero destined to save the galaxy. But the writing, it's basic, flat. Every line of dialogue is structured the same way. "We must prepare for war," the commander said. "But sir, is there another way?" the soldier asked. "No," the commander said. Over and over again. No variation, no rhythm, no texture. The descriptions are sparse. The emotions are just stated, like bullet points in a script. He was angry. She was sad. They were afraid. I swallow hard. I don't want to hurt him. "So," Elias asks, impatient now, "what do you think?" I force a smile. It's really creative. His face lights up. Yeah, your world building is great. That part is true." He leans closer. But, damn it. I hesitate, but I know I can't lie to him. Not completely. I think, maybe, your dialogue could have a little more variety. I say carefully. Like instead of always using said or asked, you could mix it up a little? He frowns. Why? Well, because otherwise it feels a little repetitive, I explain. Like you could add some descriptions between the lines. Maybe some body language or how the character's voice sounds. That way, the reader doesn't just see the words, they feel them. Elias blinks at me confused. But people say said all the time. That's how it makes sense in my head. I press my lips together. I mean, sure, but I don't get it, he cuts in. This is just how I write. It makes sense to me. I nod slowly, trying to think of another way to explain it. But something inside me sinks. I know this feeling. It's the same one I get when I spend hours trying to write a scene that just isn't working, no matter how hard I push. The frustration, the doubt, the quiet, gnawing fear that maybe I'm just not good enough. And I don't want Elias to feel that. He sighs and leans back in his chair. I just want to get better, you know. His voice is quieter now. That's why I keep asking you. I need to know what I'm doing wrong. I bite my lip. The truth is, I don't know how to teach someone to be a better writer. No one ever taught me. I learned by reading, by writing, by rewriting the same awful paragraphs over and over until something clicked. But Elias doesn't read, and I can't just transfer everything I've learned into his head. Maybe what he needs isn't a critic. Maybe what he needs is a reader. I take a deep breath. Okay, let's try this. Pick one of your favorite scenes, and let's go through it together. I'll help you make it stronger, not by changing it, but by building on what you already have. Elias looks at me, uncertainty flickering across his face. Then slowly he nods. All right, yeah, let's do it. I smile. Maybe I can't rewrite his story for him, but I can stand beside him while he figures it out. And that's enough. Elias flips through his printed pages, scanning them with the careful precision of a scientist examining a fragile specimen. His lips press into a thin line before he finally settles on a passage. All right, he says, placing his finger on a section near the middle. This scene, the one where Dorian finds the artifact. I glance at the lines of text. The scene is supposed to be a major turning point, the moment the protagonist, Dorian, discovers an ancient relic that could change the course of history. But the words on the page don't feel like a turning point. I clear my throat and begin reading aloud. Dorian entered the dark chamber. It was old and dusty. He walked forward and saw the artifact on a stone pedestal. He picked it up. It was glowing blue. He felt surprised. I stop. Elias watches me expectantly. What do you think? I choose my words carefully. I think this moment is really important to your story. It's the moment everything changes for Dorian, right? Yeah, he says, nodding. This is where he realizes the artifact is linked to his past. Okay. I run my fingers along the edge of the paper. So, let's make it feel that important. Right now, the sentences are really direct, which can be good in action scenes, but here, you want the reader to feel what Dorian is feeling. What does the chamber look like? What does the air smell like? What's going through Dorian's mind? Elias leans forward, eyes narrowing. He's listening. That's a good sign. I grab a pen and underline a sentence. Look at this. He picked it up. It was glowing blue. He felt surprised. That tells us what's happening, but it doesn't show us. What if, instead, you describe the way the glow reflects off the walls? Or how the light flickers across Dorian's fingers? Instead of just saying he's surprised, show it through his actions. Does his breath catch? Does his heartbeat speed up? Elias stares at the page for a long moment. Then, to my surprise, he grabs another pen and starts writing in the margins. I watch as he scribbles something down, pauses, crosses it out, then writes again. Finally, he pushes the paper toward me. Dorian stepped into the chamber, his boots stirring up centuries of dust. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of damp stone and something older, something almost metallic. Ahead, on a pedestal worn smooth by time, sat the artifact. A faint blue light pulsed from within its crystalline core, casting eerie shadows that danced along the walls. He reached for it, his fingers trembling slightly. The moment his skin brushed the surface, a jolt of energy shot up his arm. His breath caught. This was no ordinary relic. I read it twice. Then I grin. See, that feels like a discovery. Elias exhales, rubbing the back of his neck. Yeah. Okay. I see what you mean. I nudge his arm playfully. Told you. For the first time in a while, he laughs. And it's not the tight, uncertain chuckle he gives when he's frustrated. It's real. Something shifts between us in that moment. Maybe he won't turn into an award-winning novelist overnight. Maybe he'll still argue with me about dialogue tags. Maybe I'll still have to read through pages of stiff conversations and clunky action scenes. But for the first time, I realize it's not about fixing his writing. It's about helping him grow, the way someone once helped me. Elias picks up his pen again. Okay, he says. Let's keep going. And just like that, we do. Days pass, and this becomes our new routine. Every evening after dinner, Elias spreads his pages across the table, and we go through them together. Some nights are easier than others. Sometimes he takes my suggestions right away, his face lighting up with excitement as he rewrites a passage, adding more depth, more texture, more life. Other times, he gets defensive, insisting that this is just how it sounds in my head. Those nights, I bite my tongue, reminding myself that it's his story, not mine. Still, he's improving. I can see it. The words are getting stronger, the dialogue less robotic, the descriptions more vivid. He's even started experimenting, trying out different sentence structures, playing with pacing, adding small, quiet moments between the explosions and battle sequences. But there's one thing that still frustrates me. Elias refuses to read. I've suggested it, gently, at first. You know, I said one night, tracing my fingers over the spine of one of my favorite novels, you might find some inspiration if you read how other writers do it. He shrugged. I don't need to read to write. I tried again a week later. Even just one book, I said, placing a sci-fi novel in front of him. Just to see how dialogue flows, how scenes build tension. Lena, he groaned, pushing it aside. I get what you're saying, but that's their writing. I want to figure out my writing. I didn't push after that. But the doubt lingers in the back of my mind. No matter how much I help him, no matter how much he improves, there's only so far he can go without exposing himself to good writing. He's trying to build a spaceship without ever having seen one fly. And then one night, everything nearly falls apart. It happens after a long day. I'm exhausted, my patience worn thin from work, from errands, from life. I told Elias I wasn't up for editing tonight, but he insisted. Just one scene, he pleaded. I think I finally nailed the dialogue. So I read. We must prepare for war, the commander said. But sir, is there another way? The soldier asked. No, the commander said. I close my eyes. We've talked about this. I inhale sharply, keeping my voice even. Elias, it's still really flat. He frowns. But I like it like this. I rub my temples. Okay, but think about how real people talk. They don't just state facts back and forth like robots. I don't see the problem, he says, crossing his arms. My patience cracks. Because it's boring, Elias. His expression darkens. Wow, thanks. I curse myself immediately. That was too harsh. I didn't mean. No, I get it. He shoves his pages into a folder. You think my writing sucks. I don't think that. I soften my tone. I don't know how else to explain it to you. Well, maybe I don't need you to explain it, he snaps. Maybe I just need you to support me. That stings. I am supporting you. By tearing apart everything I write? I stare at him, my frustration bubbling into something dangerously close to anger. You asked me to help you improve. Yeah, well, maybe I don't want to improve your way. Silence. Thick and suffocating. Elias exhales, rubbing his hands over his face. Look, forget it. Let's just drop this, okay? I should stop. I should let it go. But instead the words slip out before I can stop them. You don't even read, Elias. His jaw tightens. So how do you expect to write a good book if you won't even read one? The second I say it, I regret it. Elias pushes his chair back. You know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe I shouldn't be writing. He stands, grabs his folder, and walks out of the room. And just like that, our routine, the quiet, messy, frustrating, beautiful thing we had built, falls apart. For the next few days, we don't talk about his book. Elias doesn't bring his pages to the table anymore. He doesn't ask for my feedback. When I try to bring it up, he just shrugs and changes the subject. And the worst part, he doesn't write at all. I should feel relieved. I should feel free now that I don't have to tiptoe around his feelings, now that I'm not carrying the weight of his creative struggles on my shoulders. But I don't. I miss it. I miss the way his face lit up when he got a scene just right. I miss the late-night debates about character motivations. I miss the energy of it all. But I don't know how to fix this. And then one night I find something unexpected. It's sitting on his nightstand. A novel. An actual, real, full-length novel. My heart jumps. I pick it up, flipping to the first page. It's a sci-fi book. One of the ones I had suggested weeks ago. A bookmark is wedged about a third of the way through. I blink. He's reading. For the first time in years, he's reading. I don't say anything that night. I don't bring it up at breakfast. But when Elias comes home from work the next day, I'm sitting at the table, his printed pages in front of me. He hesitates in the doorway. "What's this?" I smile. "I think we should keep going." He exhales slowly, like he's been holding his breath for days. Then he walks over, sits down, and picks up his pen. And just like that, we start again. Weeks pass. Elias doesn't mention the book on his nightstand, and I don't ask about it. But something has changed. His writing is different. Not drastically. He's still Elias, still stubborn about his favorite tropes and overly direct dialogue, but there's a new depth, a new texture to his words. It's in the way his descriptions linger, in the way his characters pause between sentences as if actually thinking. The edges of his world have softened, become less rigid, less mechanical. One night, he hands me a scene, and I notice something immediately. There's a line of dialogue, but instead of, "We need to leave," she said. It reads. She clenched her fists, her pulse hammering in her ears. "We need to leave." I blink at the page. He's showing emotion now, not just stating it. I glance up. Elias is watching me carefully, pretending not to care, but his fingers drum anxiously against the tabletop. I try to keep my expression neutral, but a slow, genuine smile spreads across my lips. "This is good," I say softly. He exhales, and I swear his shoulders loosen, just a little. We keep going. The night he finishes his first full draft, he doesn't say anything at first. I only realize when I walk into the living room and see him staring at his laptop screen, frozen, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. The document is open, the last sentence sitting there like a quiet victory. I approach slowly. "Did you?" He swallows, nodding. "Yeah." A strange, unexpected emotion wells up in my chest. Pride. I sit beside him, nudging his shoulder. "So, how does it feel?" Elias exhales a laugh, running a hand through his hair. "Honestly, a little surreal." He leans back against the couch, staring at the ceiling. "I mean, I know it still needs work. A lot of work. But..." He shakes his head, smiling. "I actually finished it." I squeeze his hand. "That's huge, Elias." He turns to look at me, and for a moment, there's something unspoken between us. A quiet understanding. Then, hesitantly, he asks, "Will you read it?" I pause. I already have read most of it. Through our late-night editing sessions, our endless debates over phrasing and structure. But this is different. He's not asking for a critique. He's asking me to experience it as a reader. I nod. Yeah, I'd love to. I set aside an entire weekend. It's strange, reading it all at once, seeing the story unfold as a complete narrative instead of in fragmented scenes. And yes, there are still issues. The pacing stumbles in places. Some characters need more depth. The prose is still rough, still undeniably Elias, but it's alive. And for the first time, I don't feel the urge to pick up my pen and make corrections. I just read. When I finish, I find Elias in the kitchen, nervously dismantling a piece of toast. He looks up when he hears me, his expression guarded. Well? I cross the room, wrap my arms around his neck, and press my forehead against his. It's a damn good story. He exhales against my shoulder, his arms wrapping around me in return. And just like that, the weight lifts. He's a writer now. Not because he's perfect, not because he's mastered every technique, but because he did it. He built a world, shaped a story, and saw it through to the end. And I know without a doubt that this is only the beginning. A few months later, I find another book on his nightstand. Then another, and another. I don't say anything, I just smile. Because I know, one day, Elias will write a book I won't need to critique at all. And when that day comes, I'll be the first in line to buy a copy.